This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
Hello, Kentuckiana. I'm your host, Dr. Lance Pearson, on Kentucky's Voice. You're probably listening to us right now on 970 AM in the Louisville area. As you all know from our longtime listeners, this is a show that deals with state and local politics mostly, but also, especially today, we're talking about some federal politics. I'm joined today on our show by Daniel Cameron, who is a candidate for U.S. Senate. We'll introduce him after this first intro break. I do want to remind our listeners and viewers, perhaps online, of all of the places that you can reach this podcast radio show. First, you are listening to us on 970 AM. If you want to watch a podcast, a broadcast of this show, you can do that on Spectrum TV, Channel 21, at, I believe, 12:30, 4, and 8 p.m. tonight. So just click on your TV guide and find Kentucky's Voice. If you are online, you're not able to get to your radio right now, you can listen to us and watch the podcast on either Facebook or YouTube at the Kentucky's Voice channel. So just go to either those, YouTube, Facebook, and search for Kentucky's Voice. There is a live stream that goes on. We also archive the video on YouTube if you want to find old broadcasts, or in a day or so, we'll cut out all the commercials and it can just be a straight show, watching that on YouTube. If you want to find any of the information about these different places that you can watch the show, you can go to our website, which is kyvoice.org. kyvoice.org. There will be links to all of those different media options. There will also be a link on there where you can donate to our radio show. We are listener supported, so if you've got a few extra bucks in your pocket and you can support getting conservative talk radio on in the Louisville area and across the state of Kentucky, we would greatly appreciate that support. You can also text us questions or comments at 502-571-0970. Let me repeat, 502-571-0970. I'll try to read those and maybe incorporate it in the show. I'm not great at that. But you can also text GIVE to that number, 502-571-0970, and a link will pop up where you can possibly give to support this radio show and this podcast. Okay, as I mentioned before, our guest today is, I'm truly honored to have on Daniel Cameron. The structure of our show, as we know, we break it into 4 segments. We're going to talk with Daniel Cameron in a long-form interview, and I want to say how grateful I am that he's willing to be on here for an hour-long live radio show where the mistakes are going to be captured. I'll give him the warning ahead of time. But we're going to talk over Daniel's background, basically what formed who he is as a person, why he's running for office, and like what motivates him and what things he wants to accomplish there. We'll talk about his political background. So he does have a pretty distinguished record in the state of in election politics. We'll talk about some of the policies that he wants to promote if he does win this election for U.S. Senate. And I don't like to say that a Senate seat is any one seat, but Mitch McConnell has been in this seat for, I think, 41 years maybe. Either way, almost as long as I've been alive. And so a lot of people think of this as Mitch McConnell's seat. It's the state's seat. And so Daniel and 11 other candidates are running for this. This will be on your May primary ballot as well as the general election, which is in November. And then finally, we'll talk over the state of the election. Basically, where are we? What are the dynamics at play? Who looks like they have great polling, fundraising? We'll talk about all those issues. And I do want to emphasize we're going to ask some tough questions. This isn't just going to be promoting Daniel as a candidate, although I want him to be able to voice what he sees this race looking like and what he's in favor of as a candidate. So join us after the break. You are on Kentucky's Voice with Dr. Lance Pearson, and I will be joined after the break with Daniel J. Cameron, candidate for U.S. Senate and former Attorney General of the state of Kentucky. Again, join us after.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host, Dr. Lance Pearson of the Kentucky Liberty Caucus and the Louisville Tea Party. I want to welcome in our first and only guest for today's show. We have an hour to listen to Daniel J. Cameron, who is a candidate for U.S. Senate, and he is the former Attorney General of the state of Kentucky. So welcome in, Daniel.
Lance, Dr. Pearson, thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor to be here in studio with you. And I really appreciate the time to talk to your viewers and to you and your listeners. So thanks to everybody who is tuning in.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's hop right into
Let's
it.
do it.
I know our listeners are much more excited to hear from you than they are from me. So let's go ahead and start a little bit with your roots.
Yeah.
I will say probably, and if we're looking at this, we're handicapping this race, there probably are three main candidates. It's going to be you, Andy Barr, and Nate Morris. And I know the other two candidates in this race, whenever I listen to their stump speeches, they're always talking about how they are 8th generation or 9th generation Kentuckians. They wouldn't be bringing that up. That isn't something you say in normal conversation unless you're trying to make a point. So tell me a little bit about your background. Where are you from? What was your upbringing like? Just tell me a little bit about how you got to this point.
Yeah, so I was born in Plano, Texas. Was there for a couple of months. My dad worked for Federal Express at the time, and so they had already essentially moved him to Kentucky, to Elizabethtown, and they were waiting on me to be born. And so after a couple of months, came to Kentucky. So spent all my formative years in E-Town. And as I tell people all the time, my parents have had a entrepreneurial spirit, and they started, in addition to working at Federal Express and my mom working at Dow Corning and then Crucible and a few other places in town, they had a coffee shop. It started as a water dispensing business, those big water jugs you see in offices. They started there and then went to a tea company called the Spice Rack. And then from there, it morphed into coffee and sandwiches. And it was a good business for them. I tell people all the time that I made cappuccinos and lattes at probably way too early of an age, but they were kind enough to humor me and let me be involved in the business. And we got to see a cross-section of the community come into that shop. And, what was fascinating about it is you saw people from all walks of life walking that business. And what they cared about was a good cup of coffee. And, they were sharing their problems and challenges and issues. And, it wasn't really based on political designation. They just wanted best for their kids and best for their families. And so I saw that at an early age, and was just grateful for the way in which I saw my parents conduct themselves in that business. They were well respected, have a lot of lifelong friendships out of that. And mom is still there. And so I get back to E-Town pretty regularly. And, if I wasn't in that business or I wasn't at church on Wednesdays, I was in the ball fields or at school. And so that was kind of my upbringing, and certainly. And
so what high school did you go to?
I went to John. So I started at Central Hardin High School.
Central Hardin, okay.
And then at John, they ended up, splitting the county or adding another high school, John Hardin High School. So I spent my last 2 years at John Hardin. So graduated from John Hardin High School, and then obviously went to the University of Louisville for undergrad and stayed for law school. But Kentucky is a special place, and my home community of Hardin County is a special place, and just so grateful for the people that have poured into and invested in me, whether it's in my professional career or just as a person, and helping me, become the man I am today.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like family and your family's coffee shop was very important in forming kind of who you are as a person. Now you got your own family. So tell me a little bit about that. What does your family look like? How long have you been married? I know that you are married, and you're actually married to an Oldham County girl. I live just in the edge of Oldham County.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about your current family.
So we, Mackenzie and I been married since 2020. We got married in July of 2020, and she grew up in Oldham County. Her family grew up in or have long roots in sort of Crestwood area, and That's where they live now. In fact, that's where we live. We live in Crestwood and love the community. But Mackenzie was a school teacher when I met her and taught there in Oldham County. And we've got now 2 boys at home. And Lance, as you know, we've got one on the way in February. It looks like, due date's the end of the month. But just based on track record, I think our third is going to come during the middle of February. So it's a fun house. I tell people all the time, the heart and soul of our family is Mackenzie, my wife. And she has, she is just my support system, and value and trust her advice and opinion, and so grateful for the way in which she serves our family and takes care of the day-to-day routines. And I think right now they're at a play place. I just got some pictures on my phone of Theodore and Bennett in some big, indoor sliding facility. So, love her to death, and so grateful for the two boys. They are a bundle of energy. You've seen Theodore out and seen Bennett out, and they're charmers, that's for sure. And but we live in, as I mentioned, Crestwood, and love the community. And our church, we attended Southeast, and we were at the Blankenbaker campus. Now that we're in Crestwood, we go to the Crestwood campus primarily. It's a good community for us, man. We love it, and love spending as much time with them as I possibly can.
That's right. Okay, so you kind of led into your church background.
Yeah.
You've spoken openly about your faith this campaign, which I think that really connects with a lot of Kentuckians. This is, we're the heart of the Bible Belt, I think. So how has your religious background influenced your public service, and just basically how does your faith inform who you are and who you want to be as a U.S. Senator? Well,
I tell people my relationship with Christ is who I am. I am, before anything else, my identity is in Christ. And I've said that repeatedly, whether it's this race or, in the governor's race. I don't get my identity from being called Attorney General, and when I was in that role, my identity is as a Christ follower, as a husband to Mackenzie, and a father to our 2 and one on the way. So that's how I view myself, and that was because of my upbringing. My parents, we were in church on Wednesdays and Sundays, and it's core to who we are as a people. And I tell people all the time, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers and listeners can attest to this, you have the faith of your parents when you are in the home. It's when you get out of the home that you really figure out who you are in terms of your relationship with Christ. And that was the same for me. I went to U of L, and you find out, okay, is this who I want to be in terms of a connection with and relationship with Christ? And, we live imperfectly. No one is perfect. Right. I'm still learning every day. Mackenzie and I, after church yesterday, were reflecting on the message, talking about, what are things that we can do better as parents, as husband and wife, as a son and a daughter. How are we, constantly trying to build upon, our faith in a way that ensures that we're salt and light here in this earth. And so that's, core to who I am. And so people should expect that that's what, they'll see on the campaign trail, is that relationship. And, we saw what, happened to Charlie Kirk, right? Yeah. And, that certainly invokes a lot of fear and worry and angst and all of those things that can come because of that. But I'm reminded constantly, and I think this is how Charlie would want people to think as well, of what Christ said in John 16:33, speaking to his disciples. He's talking about, there'll be a time when he's not there, and the great advocate, which we all know as the Holy Spirit, will, be here. And he says that in this world we will have trouble. But in the very next sentence, he says, but be of good cheer, because I have overcome the world. Right. And that is where I try to live. And that's what I tell people that are wanting to engage in the political process is, if you're a Christian, a center-right person, a conservative, be engaged, be in the arena, because we need folks of strong caliber that are willing to speak truth and speak boldly. And so that is who I am to my core, and that's what I try to. And Lance, my relationship with Christ, conducts how I talk about issues and how I talk about other people in the race. So you're not going to hear a lot of disparagement from me and all that sort of thing. because I'm just trying to reflect that relationship. But yeah, it's certainly very deeply a part of who I am.
Right. And we'll probably carry this over into the next segment, but I think part of that background is having a strong moral backbone.
Mm-hmm.
And so you did serve as the highest ranking law enforcement officer in the state as Attorney General. So how did kind of that moral background influence things like fighting some of the social ills in society, like opioids, or an emphasis on law and order?
Right.
So just talk a little bit about that. We'll carry that over in the next segment.
Well, let me step back and say, to your other question about, how does it impact sort of your decision making? I mean, it certainly informs my decision making, and I think people saw that during my time as an Attorney General. I mean, I fundamentally believe that we've got to stand firm for our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And so when you have a governor that says that he's going to shut down churches, which is a complete determination to intrude upon our First Amendment right to worship, right?
And we'll pick this conversation up right after the break. You're on Kentucky's Voice. I'm Dr. Lance Pearson.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host, Dr. Lance Pearson. I'm joined today and a very honored guest, Daniel J. Cameron, our former Attorney General and also a candidate for U.S. Senate. We're going to continue our conversation from the last segment. Basically, tell me a little bit more about how your faith informed your time as Attorney General.
So as I was saying, it informed the decision-making to, fight the unconstitutional restrictions that the governor placed on us and terms of being able to worship. And so we went into federal court, and after 9 days, got our churches reopened in the Commonwealth. And I know there were a lot of people out there, your viewers in particular, that were standing firm with us on that. So thank you very much for being willing to stand with us. And then, you think of sort of the biblical perspective that we are supposed to speak for the voiceless and those that cannot speak for themselves and to do justice. When I ran for Attorney General, the thing that I wanted our office to focus on is how do we fight the opioid epidemic and bring more dollars in resources to our state to help us rid ourselves an affliction that plagued our people for far too long. So we were able to bring in nearly $900 million to the state to fight the opioid epidemic. Again, it's not a magic elixir. It's not an end-all, be-all, but it is a significant amount of money that gets us down the road to helping heal our communities. That was a big driver of the effort that we undertook in the AG's office. And again, that's built on compassion for our fellow man and woman and our children that have been wrapped up in this. You talk about law and order. There's a reason that I care deeply about law and order as it relates to the drug epidemic and our southern border. If we don't have safe communities, and if we don't have a secure southern border that stops the illegal and illicit drugs that make their way into Kentucky, and I'm talking a lot about fentanyl right now, and hurting our people, then I think we're doing a disservice when we are in public life if we don't speak to ensuring that we have a southern border that is secure and that we stand firm for our law enforcement community, which I've done and done because it was right by the laws of our state and by our Constitution.
Okay. All right. We got some tough questions coming.
All right, I'm ready.
This is what I hear on the ground
when
we're talking about Daniel Cameron as a candidate for this U.S. Senate seat. The first one is your connection to Mitch McConnell. So that's kind of an elephant in the room. Your career has been linked to Mitch McConnell. I don't know. I believe at some point, maybe he or you referred to yourself as a mentee. And let me just say right off, he's not necessarily my wing of the party, but I respect Mitch McConnell as a strategist, and I think a lot of people in the state appreciate all the money that he brought back. So I'm not personally that negative on Mitch McConnell. However, a lot of people in the state, they would say that association is a liability. So in particular, I think what people are really upset about is the way that he has influenced lower level politics, not necessarily him as a politician or even a political leader, but like the way that he's put his thumb on the scales. I think a lot of people see it that way. And the other part is he's viewed as the establishment. He was the longest serving leader of a majority Senate party in history. And so like anti-establishment sentiment just kind of got latched onto him. So tell me a little bit about how that relationship began. What was the start of that relationship? And then how that has evolved over time. What's your current relationship with Mitch McConnell?
Well, look, as I tell people all the time, I mean, you can look at, my time as Attorney General. And, what I tell people all the time is I am my own man. And I'm going to continue to stand firm for the values and interests of the men, women, and children of our Commonwealth in our 120 counties. I demonstrated that when I was the Attorney General. I tell people this. I say, look, when folks were protesting, they weren't protesting on Mitch McConnell's front yard. They weren't protesting on Rand Paul's front yard. They were protesting on Daniel Cameron's front lawn. The Courier-Journal didn't call Rand Paul or Mitch McConnell an angel of death. They called Daniel Cameron an angel of death because I was fighting the unconstitutional COVID restrictions that the governor put in place. And look, everybody to some extent that is in this race has a relationship with Mitch McConnell, and that's certainly the case for all of us that are in this race. What is evident, and as you know, Lance, and a lot of your viewers know, the McConnell team is supporting Andy Barr. I know that from firsthand knowledge. I know that from talking to the donors that typically give to McConnell. They've been told to give to the Barr folks. And what I say is, at the end of the day, money does not vote. People vote. And what I have been assured of, or what I am confident of, is that people will make a judgment and decision based on track record, not how much money you have in the bank and not who necessarily is backing your campaign. And what I have seen from people and who I've had great conversations with is they want somebody they can trust. And what I've demonstrated time and time again as the Attorney General and even in professional life more broadly, is that I'm going to stand up for conservative values and principles. That's what I've always done. That's innate to who I am. And I'm going to continue to do that if I'm given the opportunity to serve in the United States Senate. And let me also say that when I spoke at the Republican National Convention in 2020, when I was there to speak on behalf of and in support of President Trump's reelection, I said then, and I will continue to say it, I am my own man. I've got my own mind. I was saying it then as it related to Joe Biden, who said that if you voted for President Trump, you weren't black. He said that if you didn't vote for Joe Biden, then you weren't black. Let me just say this. It is clear that we need leadership in this state that's going to stand firm for the values of the men, women, and children of our 120 counties, and is going to do so guided by your values, your interests, the Constitution, and our Bill of Rights. I've demonstrated that time and time again, and that's what I'll continue to do. And there's no secret that, when I said that I thought Mitch McConnell was wrong on, the Hegseth vote and the Tulsi Gabbard vote and the RFK vote, look, their team didn't like that. And again, I think it's completely fair and appropriate and responsible. You'll never hear me disparage anybody in this race, but if there's a policy distinction or a way in which I think I would have done something differently, you, the viewer, the voter, needs to know that. And I'm going to continue to speak truthfully on these topics. And what Lance, I hope you know about me is that there's nothing that I won't share with the folks who want to know about me and this campaign.
Okay. And so I think just on background, you clerked for him after law school and was his first legal counsel from 2015 to 2016. And generally, I'm sure you still have a lot of respect for him. If someone gave me my first job, I would have a lot of respect for
Yeah,
that person.
you'll always find. Look, I will speak respectfully about.
Yeah.
You know, if you and I are sitting in opposite rooms, I'm always going to speak respectfully about Dr. Lance Pearson. I'm going to speak respectfully about Senator Paul, Senator McConnell. I'm going to speak respectfully and in support of President Donald J. Trump. I'm going to speak respectfully about Thomas Massey, because that's just who I am. When there are policy differences, obviously there'll be disagreements, and I think it's appropriate to have those. And the viewers and listeners should understand where a particular person comes on any given issue. And so I'm going to continue to speak my mind and speak my mind in a way that reflects the values of Kentucky, because I know that if I'm given an opportunity to serve in this seat, to your point earlier, this is the people seat. This is the people of the Commonwealth seat. And it is my responsibility, if given the opportunity to serve, to stand up for your values and interests, and that's what I'll do.
Okay. And we'll probably lead into the next segment with this. It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Much respect for his legacy. You are the only candidate in this race that has actually won a statewide election. There's a lot of talk about the Beshear election. We'll talk about that after the break. But you have won a statewide election. You've actually won two, because you won the primary for governor.
Right.
And so just talk a little bit about that MLK legacy and what it's like being the first black AG in Kentucky and the first AG in Kentucky overall in the last, I think, 90 years.
Yeah,
So you can lead in, but we're almost at our break.
Well, I was the first Republican Attorney General since 1948, and obviously it was an honor to serve in that capacity as the 51st Attorney General of this Commonwealth. And look forward to chatting some more about it in the next segment. Yeah.
Join us right after the break. We'll continue this conversation.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host, Dr. Lance Pearson, with the Louisville Tea Party and the Kentucky Liberty Caucus. I'm joined today with Daniel J. Cameron, who's a candidate for U.S. Senate. He was also our state's Attorney General. So let me just pick up where we were last time and just reiterate. Daniel Cameron did win the Kentucky Attorney General spot, the first Republican Attorney General since, I think he said 1948, which is incredible. So people think of this as a very heavily Republican state. That's actually a very recent phenomenon. So that was a big win. You also won the primary against, I think it was like 10 or 11 people for the governor. Now, unfortunately, and for our listeners, we're a conservative show, unfortunately,
of course,
you didn't win that governor's race against Andy Beshear. I do want to just say Andy Beshear seems to be a pretty effective campaigner and politician at the state level. This is actually his third consecutive statewide race that he won. So talk to me. I hear a lot of this on the ground, just basically complaints. Why didn't we, this is a Republican state. Why didn't we beat Andy Beshear?
Yeah.
Why didn't we win that race? And so why don't you just tell me a little bit about what you got out of that race, what lessons you learned from that race that you might be able to carry into this next election?
Well, Lance, I mean, your viewers know this. We worked our tail off in that race to win. I remember, and maybe some of your viewers probably don't remember this necessarily, but there was a poll conducted before the primary in the governor's race in 2023. And it listed out the top three candidates that were running on the Republican side, and it put us in a matchup against Andy Beshear. It was myself, it was Ryan Quarles, and it was Kelly Craft. And I was the closest to Andy Beshear in that poll at 9 points. That was the closest person. This was before, again, our primary was conducted, but they were just forecasting, like, what would it look like in a general election matchup? So we knew it would be a difficult environment, but what we were convinced of is that if we worked our tails off and we got in front of as many people as we could, that we would win, that we'd close that distance and win. And of course, the last poll that came out in that race, the Thursday before the general election, had me up +1. So we felt really good going into that final day. And essentially what happened is the turnout on election day wasn't enough to get us over what had already occurred in the early voting, which we know Democrats have been taking a lot of advantage of. So we had historically low turnout on Election Day. It was 38%. And I think most folks forecasted 41 to 42%. And so what the lesson I took out of that is, one, polling does not matter. You got to run hard through the tape. You got to always, ensure that you get your people to the polls, and you got to run a ground heavy game. And what we have endeavored to do in this campaign is focus on grassroots organizations all across the state, because we know at the end of the day, building those relationships, ensuring that I'm in as many of these communities as I possibly can, critical. And so that is what we're focused on, and that is a lesson learned. And my hope is that ensures that we have higher turnout come the general election. We know in federal races, historically, there is higher turnout, but we don't want to rest on that. We want to just work our tails off. And whether it's myself, our campaign manager, Nathaniel Hurt, Atlee Smedley, who's my right-hand man, or who I refer to as my de facto campaign manager, my wife, Mackenzie. I mean, we are constantly looking for ways to engage in a meaningful way with people all across this Commonwealth. And I think that's going to carry us not only through the primary, but will carry us to the general as well.
So especially more focus on the grassroots.
Amen.
And I will say I've seen you all over the state at all of these little group meetings, which I think is great. Okay, let's shift to policy. Basically, what is it that you want to accomplish? So what do you see as the three most important issues facing the country that you want to try to address to some extent at your time in Senate? And no senator's able to fix all the world's problems, but what is it that you want to focus on?
Well, let me step back. And you mentioned today was Martin Luther King Day. And certainly, part of my genesis for jumping into this race is that, for our three boys, we want to see a colorblind society, one that is based on merit and opportunity, and not one that is riven by divisions that are created by the far left related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I tell people all the time that we need a country that is built on merit, excellence, intelligence, and integrity. We don't need a country that's built on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is part of the reason we jumped into this race. As I go around the state, what has become apparent to me that the issues that are confronting the men, women, and children of this Commonwealth, I think about our boys again, and I think about kids and grandkids across this Commonwealth. We've got to get our national debt under control. I mean, I think we're roughly at $38 trillion in debt. You talk about the future and setting our kids up for success. We've got to look for meaningful ways in which to address that. Step away from that, want to focus on how can Kentucky lead when it comes to the future and the technologies that are coming online? I mean, you read stories all the time about the increased capabilities of AI and the need that there will be around energy for those technologies of the future. And what Kentucky has is low-cost and reliable energy, whether it become in the form of coal, natural gas, or nuclear, which we're starting to see down at the gaseous diffusion plant. I think Kentucky needs to be an active participant in that conversation. And what it looks like is going to be determined by the people in a local community. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all strategy or approach, and everyone needs to have a say. But I am excited that we are even a part of that conversation simply because we have low-cost and reliable energy. When you think about another core issue outside of the energy context and the debt, we also got to focus on how are we putting more money in people's pockets. What are we doing to ensure that we are making home purchases a reality? What are we doing to make sure that people can buy groceries and gas and put food on the table? So energy, putting more money in people's pocket, the national debt, and then I'll just say, as I've often said, healthcare costs, and I want to sandwich in there immigration and the border. We've got to focus on the American people and the American worker. When it comes to who are we providing benefits to, they shouldn't be going to illegals. They need to go to people that are citizens of this country. When it comes to law and order, we need to have folks that are respecting the rule of law, and that we're supporting our law enforcement community. And so these are the issues that I'm focused on as I go across this Commonwealth. And as I hear from people, these are the things that they care about.
Okay. All right. Let me drill down on a few of those and maybe just hit on some of the things that I think that was a great list. I think those are issues that are top of mind for our listeners and for Kentucky in general. So on the economy, where are you on tax cuts for middle-class families in particular? Like I know in the Big Beautiful Bill that locked in a lot of those 2017 tax cuts. I'm assuming you're pro-tax cut, but obviously there's a balance there. If we're bringing in less revenue, we got to spend less. So what's your thoughts on tax cuts versus spending cuts, those sorts of things in terms of our national budget?
Well, in terms of our budget, obviously, we've got to reduce the amount of waste, fraud that we see within the national government. The Trump administration has started that work. I actually think Senator Paul has a pretty unique piece of legislation. It's called the REINS Act. It basically says that, before administration spends any more money, basically, if they're saying they're going to spend, $100 million or more, they need to check with Congress. So that gives Congress ability to reinstitute its power over the purse strings, which is really important for the fundamental nature of our government, but also would help reduce some of the spending that we're doing related to our debt load. Look, I'm going to be a staunch proponent of tax cuts and the permanency that we see within the Big Beautiful Bill of those 2017 tax cuts. That's important, and what we can't do is jeopardize that by having a different Congress that would reverse those tax changes. So I'm going to fight tooth and nail to ensure that those stay permanent in place for the American people, because you need more money in your pocket to pay for gas, groceries, and to the extent your kids are in summer leagues, and you need extra dollars in the wallet for that as well. So I believe in tax cuts. I think it helps the economic activity of people on the ground. Consumer spending can go up, and you're able to put more money down for house payments and all those sorts of things. Healthcare costs. It helps you pay and offset some of those healthcare costs if you've got more money in your pocket. So those are important. But yes, at the same time, let's pass the REINS Act. Let's ensure that we're cutting out waste, fraud, and abuse, and let's look for other ways in which we can sensibly cut the debt, because it is crippling and will hurt our future generations.
Okay. And following up, another topic that's kind of top of mind is tariffs.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think the appropriate role of tariffs are? I think, generally the hope is that tariffs are going to protect jobs locally, but Kentucky is uniquely positioned such that I believe there's been a study that said Kentucky has been hit the most on tariffs. We export a lot of goods overseas, and the other countries imposing tariffs in response to ours. So what's your thought on tariffs? Number one, should it be Congress or should it be the president handling those decisions? And then what's the appropriate role for tariffs?
Well, when you get a new president in the White House and they commit to a course of action related to the economy and an economic agenda, I think it's totally appropriate to allow that president to have an opportunity to enact that economic agenda. And what I will say is, you think about Harrodsburg, Kentucky, and their ability to make the glass for the iPhone that most of us carry around, and the millions of dollars of investment that are coming to Harrodsburg and in Mercer County, that is because of the Trump economic agenda. So I support those efforts. Look, the president, when it comes to tariffs, has a position and a belief, and I think a lot of viewers believe this as well, that we've been taken advantage of for way too long, and you needed to restore balance to the trade process globally. That is what he has been undertaking, and we've had some success there. What I love about this president is that he is constantly churning and understanding new information. And so as he hears about particular issues, he's willing to be flexible on those. And as a senator from Kentucky, I'm going to ensure that the
Join us after the break. We'll continue the conversation.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson. I'm joined today by U.S. Senate candidate and former AG of the state of Kentucky, Daniel J. Cameron. We're going to continue our conversation. We talked a lot about your policy prescriptions, kind of what are the things that you're in favor for or want to accomplish. As a current lawyer and a former AG, I think it's very likely if you get elected, you're going to wind up on the Judiciary Committee. And so for our listeners, probably the most important committees in Congress are the appropriations committees. They handle the budget, where the money goes. But the next most important committee is actually the Judiciary Committee. They basically vote on and approve judges. And that's actually, even when Congress is split and you can't get much of anything accomplished, there's no filibuster for judges anymore. Mitch McConnell actually got rid of that, and it lets you push through judges. So talk just very briefly, what's your ideal type of judge? What is it that you would be looking for in judges if you're on that committee?
Well, Lance, for your viewers out there, this is going to be a pretty quick answer.
Yeah.
What I'm going to be looking for is Justice Clarence Thomas
Okay.
and Justice Samuel Alito. They are the hallmarks, to me, of what a jurist should look like, in the sense of standing firm on the four corners of a document, the originalism of a text, as opposed to trying to engineer or social engineer a specific outcome. And so that's what I'm going to look for, someone that mimics Clarence Thomas or Justice Alito, and someone who is doggedly persistent about the words of the Constitution as they are, as opposed to what they want them to mean.
Okay. All right. Let's shift into state of the election, state of the campaign. If I'm looking at it as an impartial observer, it seems like every time anyone releases a poll, it says somewhere in the neighborhood of Daniel Cameron is the current favorite by about 15 points over the second contender. Basically, where do you see the campaign in terms of polling and popularity, favorability versus unfavorability, all those issues? I'm sure you're aware of all those polls.
Well, Lance, you brought up something earlier, which, just recently I thought of, because I ran for Attorney General and now, and then ran for governor and now running in the race for the United States Senate. I will have been before the voters and been on the ballot roughly 5 times. And so I've got great statewide name ID, it's nearly 100%. And so I go most places and have instant connections with people because they've seen me in their communities before, and have great conversations, and so thankful for people that have been willing to support me. And I know that's not only supporting me, it's supporting our family, and folks have gotten to know Mackenzie and our 2 boys, and they'll get to know our third when he's here as well. And so I think people trust us and, dare I say, care for us as a family, because I know so many folks out there have been praying for us and just praying for health and stamina and perseverance during this race. And so the favorability numbers have been strong in terms of, where I sit amongst people's opinion. And so I'm grateful for that, and recognized and honored by those that care deeply about us as a family and want to see us succeed. And then, of course, to your point, the polling overwhelmingly has been good. I, been polling in the high 30s to low 40s, and thankful for that. As I said earlier, you got to run hard, and you can't take anything for granted. And so I'm going to push and try to get to as many places as possible, and certainly feel good about where we are, and feel confident that I will be the Republican nominee for the United States Senate, and will go on to win the general election. But, to the extent there are folks at home that want to join up with us, certainly would be grateful for that. It is an honor. Look, as I said earlier, people vote, not money. And, we want to continue raising money. But, when I go into a small group of folks that want to support this campaign, and there are 50 of them, and they end up raising us $300, that's a big deal to me. because I know that, they're not millionaires, they're not billionaires. They're folks that live and work and are growing their families in communities here in Kentucky. And so when they give to the campaign, that's bigger than anything or any other millionaire or billionaire check, because at the end of the day, you got to win people's trust and hearts here in Kentucky, and we're trying to do that. Okay.
And so my summary of the current polling is basically you do have near universal name recognition. The favorability numbers are actually incredibly impressive. I think you're plus 42 on favorability. So everyone knows him, and people that know Daniel like him versus people that really hate him. All right, that's really what that is. And just for reference, the same poll had Trump only at plus 6. So people are very polarized on Trump. A lot of people love him. A lot of people really hate him, and most of those are Democrats. So,
yes.
Nevertheless, so that's where you are heading into it. Now, the most important thing that fundraising does is it allows you to boost that name recognition, and given that you've run multiple times, people know you. So I think there is a very strong case that you probably don't need as much money as some of these candidates that aren't well known to people. But the fundraising reports from late 2025 have Barr with, I think the last report was $6.4 million in reserves, and Nate Morris with about $1.5 million in reserves. The last that we've heard from your campaign is about $630K in reserves. So while you are able to overcome a lot of that, that is a big hole in terms of fundraising. Basically, why do you think the fundraising has been sluggish relative to these other campaigns, if we're just being honest about it? And then what is it that you are going to be focusing on, probably till the end of March especially? You really want to have that money in reserve so you can book those TV ad times and you don't get swamped on TV. So what's your plan to address those fundraising issues, and what's the source of those?
Yeah, well, I tell everybody I can, go to CameronForKentucky.com if you want to give a few dollars to the campaign. I'm working my tail off. I mean, I make, 2 and 3 hours worth of phone calls a day and meeting with prospective donors and having those conversations. And, the polling demonstrates that I'm in a very strong position to win. And, we're not going to need as much money as some of the other candidates. I remember in the governor's primary, I got outspent 12 million to 1 and still won nearly 49% of that vote.
That's right.
We will have enough resources to win this race, and I'm convinced of it, and I'm committed to ensuring that I get in front of as many people as I can that are writing those $100 checks and going to help us out. Obviously, to the extent folks want to write larger checks, we will take those. There's no question about that. A lot of the big money in the state, again, it's no secret, or it's the worst kept secret in the Commonwealth. They're giving their money to the Barr campaign. And again, that's okay. Folks, if they're with the McConnell team and they want to be with the Barr team, that's all right. At the end of the day, you got to be your own man. And I want folks to know that if, I win this primary and win the general election, my interest is going to be the people of Kentucky, not lobbyists, not special interest groups, the people of Kentucky. That is what I'm committed to, and that is what I'm focused on. And so, again, we're going to have the resources to win. I'm not personally, our family's not personally wealthy. And so, we are very much grateful for those that have come and walked alongside us in this race and are going to continue to do so, and know that when it comes down to it, it's about getting people to the polls. That's what we're focused on, and that's what we're going to get done.
Well, and so we talked a little bit about those numbers, how much money you have on hand. I will say that Andy Barr carried over $4 million from previous campaigns, and I believe that Nate Morris has given $4.4 million of his own fortune. So Daniel's legitimately a middle-class guy. He doesn't have $4.4 million to throw into his campaign. And so I actually think that's appealing to people. They want people that are like them, that care about people like them, rather than the big money interests.
Let me just say, we're constantly looking over our budget, trying to figure out. I mentioned the sports. We're looking at putting Theodore in something called I-9 Sports. Some of the parents out there will know what that is. Well, that's something you got to work into your budget. You got to figure out, okay, how do you pay for that? How are you paying for health care? How are you making sure you allocate enough money for groceries because, those are expensive. How are you allocating enough money to the gas budget? So these are decisions that we as a family, as I know you all are at home, are making. These are important decisions that, and just know that when I go to the United States Senate, that will be the perspective from which I think about these issues.
All right. And now let me just give you a couple minutes to basically make your pitch. If I'm a voter, and I am a voter, in the 2026 Kentucky primary, let's just focus on the primary for now. Why should I vote for you rather than any of these other candidates that are on the ballot? There are 12, but in particular, Barr and Morris are probably the other contenders. Go ahead.
Well, Lance, to your viewers at home, I just want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for supporting us in previous campaigns and walking alongside us. I was at a Kentucky Motorcycle and Bikers Association event at Rough River this past Saturday, and I was reminded that they'd given us Bikers for Cameron T-shirts, and they'd given one to Theodore. That T-shirt has become like an heirloom in our home, and it's now Bennett now wears it, and it's just a reflection of the relationship that I've had with voters all across this Commonwealth, and we deeply appreciate and value your support. And what I want to say to you is my commitment is to stand firm for your values and interests in Washington, D.C. You don't have to worry about where I'll be on the issues because you've seen my track record. You've seen me help bring in nearly $900 million to the state to fight the opioid epidemic. You saw when I went into federal court and got our churches reopened after 9 days when the governor tried to shut them down, which was unconstitutional. You saw me fight the Biden administration when they tried to force a vaccine mandate on our state. We went into federal court and got those vaccine mandates related to COVID stopped in Kentucky. You saw me take a really strong stand for our law enforcement community when it was not easy, when I had people protesting on our front lawn, when it was a tragic situation in Louisville. But we did what was right because I stand firm for our Constitution and for the laws of this state. You know where I will be on the issues. You can trust me. You can verify where I've been because you've seen my track record. And I'd be grateful for your help in this race for the United States Senate. Together, we can do it. We don't have to take money from special interests and the lobbyists. We are focused on a campaign about the people of this Commonwealth. God bless you.
All right. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Lance Pearson on Kentucky's Voice. I want to thank Daniel Cameron for joining us. And I thank you for your time. Consider your vote wisely.